from retailers a lot while
We do.
they're, thankfully, we love to see folks working on their websites, updating their websites.
Absolutely.
So what do we, I guess, what are we talking about?
Well, sometimes you look at your website, particularly on a mobile device, and the images are wonky. It looked
hmm
fine on the desktop, but now some of the images are smaller and they don't take up the width of your phone or whatever, or they're just off. They don't align correctly.
hmm
And that often has to do with the size of the image itself, not one image, because if it was just one, it'd be fine. For instance, this image here at the top doesn't really matter what size this image is because there's only one. But when you
hmm
get into things like these column widths, if these images end up being different widths or different proportions, then as the site gets smaller for different devices, sometimes they're going to stack and they won't align correctly. And
Yeah.
so that's what we want to talk about today, recommended image sizes. And just to make it simple, there is a handy dandy um, page in the Help Center. If you go to the Help Center and you type recommended, but this is, of course, this link's in the notes as well. But if you go to this page, image recommended image sizes, we'll stop here for a shameless plug. These little play icons with the owl in it is where you can find context appropriate versions of this exact thing where we're explaining these things.
hmm
But you'll see that there's a couple of information pieces about images. So they need to be less than 250 kilobytes for full width images. And that's just because pages that load slow is no good for Google's and search. So you want to make them load fast. Best way to do that is to have lightweight images. And then here's where it gets into this. So if you have a one column image, kind of like this, then you want to, the recommended size is 1170 by 390 pixels. And, but if you're doing a full width image, then you do 1920 by 640. Now, again, there's nothing magic about that. You could do 2000 by 1000. You can do whatever you want,
hmm
but it's good to keep it consistent. So if
hmm
you keep it consistent as you actively update your website, as we hope everybody does, then that makes sure those images as they swap in and out always take up the same amount of space and they behave appropriately on different device sizes. But the key part is not necessarily the exact number of pixels. The key part is that it's the same proportions or ratio.
hmm
So, in other words, this 1920 by 640, if you made that 960 by 320, that's just half of that. And you put two of those together, they'd still align correctly on the site because the proportions are the same. What
hmm
we don't want to have is 1920 by 640, 1920 by 800, 1100 by 900, and then try and put those together. That's what'll throw things off.
Yeah, and even just between different pages on your website.
Yeah, exactly. So a good point. So if you're doing your service page, if you got a page, let's see if this one get lucky. Yep. So this got a little image at the top. And remember, I'm gonna guess this is gonna be off, but it's a demo site, so
Yeah.
forgive me. No, it's the same. See how that all lines up nice and pretty. That's kind of nice. Same here. So we've done a good job with our demo site of making sure that what displays is consistent across sizes. It gets more important when you get into these two column things because these images are going to display next to each other. And so if one of them is the recommended 768 by 350, but the other one is 800 by 320, if it's close, it'll probably be fine on a desktop.
Yep.
But when it starts to try and stack in a mobile, that's when you'll see the inconsistency of it. So,
hmm
whatever the size you pick, obviously stick to the recommended is best. But whatever size you pick, let's just say to your eye, an 800 by 300 image looks better. Fine. Just every time you do a two column, try and make them all 800 by 300.
Yeah.
And same with these. So it just goes down as you get into this.
hmm
These different columns. So just pay attention to those sizes. It'll make your life easier. Here's
Yeah.
something as I was getting ready for this. I don't know that I necessarily knew this, but the in the pre-built content blocks, the dark gray placeholder or images that are in the column and the light gray is in the edit content. I did not
Hmm.
know that's what those colors.
I didn't know. I just kind of, whenever I used to work on websites, I maybe as you said, once I was consistent, I was going to the same places, but I think I just would check in both locations. So I would find it.
Yeah. So and what that means is, so if you look here, you got this edit content. That's the kind of the foreground of
hmm
this piece. But if I go here and mouse, you see edit column settings. And then that's the two you can see from this view. And if I go to the settings and the section settings, this image here ends up being the background image of the entire block. So there's three different layers to to all of these block sections. But that's what that means. So when you do a fresh, let's do one and see.
That
When you you can see it here. So
there we go.
the dark gray is the columns, and the light gray is the edit content, the foreground settings.
Yeah, there's a full with two column section below that might be a different sort of example. Like that bad boy.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But I'd never known that those different. That's what those different colors meant.
Mm-hmm.
I learned something. Maybe
Yeah.
you learned something. Maybe you learned something.
I have an extra little like marketing pro tip.
Let's have it.
Apply that same practice to your marketing emails. If you build your own emails.
Yes.
So I don't have a recommended size for you. I mean, we're happy to share what we create for retailers or when we build our own emails. But if you have subtopics, two column sections, or maybe just like a shorter full width graphic, just if you have multiple of those, just pick one size, keep it consistent,
Yeah, I
displays
like that.
nicely. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. That makes it because the smallest things will throw people off, and oddities in the way images display, and that can sometimes affect the corresponding copy that's next to it, the text. Just be consistent, and if you aren't sure about it, use this recommended image size, again linked in the description, but just go to the Help Center, search recommended. And if that all just made it more confusing, then ask client success for help.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
this was something I wanted to naming images. Since we're talking about images, I don't know that it's going to move the needle greatly, but name them something worthwhile. So, WMBTB 3895, not as helpful as person riding mountain bike as a page name. If there's any help to be had from a search perspective of reading that name, take a minute and make it something useful.
Yeah, because that is, I mean, people, depending on how folks are viewing your website, if they're using accessibility tools, that is visible. That's,
Yeah. Good point. Let's see. Anything else? I think that pretty much covers it. So be consistent. Use this document. Ask for help if you need it. Have a lovely day.
Yes, have a lovely day.